Over the last decade, we have seen a lot of rise in the usage of digital technologies and across industries. So insurers have not been really left behind. But what we have also heard is that this technology creates a lot of opportunity for the insurers in terms of how they service the customers or the insured. But there is a lot of noise out there. We constantly hear some terms called as digital distribution, digital, what you call as marketing, and there are a lot of terms in terms of technologies being used like artificial intelligence, chat boxes, and telematics and other stuff. So, and these are some of the few hot topics. But having heard all of them for a person like me, it's very hard to discern, what is the big picture when we talk about technology and how is it used by your insurance industry? And what does success look like for an insurer in this new world, or we call it the digital world? So with that as a starting, I just wanted to probably start with you, Kirti. In terms of coming out of the pandemic, how do you think that the customer expectations have changed, and what should the insurance companies be focusing on?
Thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Banking Frontiers, for having me here. That's a great question, Karthik. I think things have changed, and things have changed how, right? For everybody, and so have they for insurers. I think the first change is that because of the uncertainty that we all went through, the loss of lives that we saw, especially during the wave 2, the first change that has happened is that customers or individuals have become aware of insurance. And we saw that, right? Even customers who had bought insurance, during the first wave, we saw them reaching out to us to check who their nominees are, whether their address is correct. So the awareness did increase, okay, which is good. We all got used to self-service at home. We had to do that, right? And that also translated in our behavior all across. Customers are okay to do self-service even when we talk of insurance. Otherwise, earlier it would be go to the agent, call somebody. That behavior has changed, and I think that will remain with us for a very long time. The third change is that everybody took to digital, right? As organizations, and I'm not talking of insurance alone, everybody implemented a lot of digital tools. The digital adoption accelerated. Everybody got used to having digital, even maids and drivers, right? Digital payments, digital purchases, e-commerce sites, everything. So what has happened is that all customers have tasted what digital means, right? So therefore, their expectations from an insurer have also changed. Fourth change is that there is a need in the customer's mind for having an omni-channel experience. If I walk into a branch, I should get the same instant fulfillment that I would get if I went to the website or I interacted with the chatbot. So similar experience across channels and also end-to-end experience, right? And typically in insurance, the processes were, while digital was there for the last 4 or 5 years, the processes were phygital. But customers are wanting everything digital. You may do physically, but I want it instantly. I want it on the digital platform or the platform of my choice. Last one is very, very personal experiences are required. I mean, we will not like, or none of our customers would like to get a communication which says that, dear customer, right? Starting from there to real personalized experiences is something that every customer wanted. The openness to use video, I think, increased.
Sure.
We had pre-conversion video calls earlier as well. Customers would be reluctant. And after the pandemic, we have seen that customers are very fine with getting on a video call with their agent, with the customer service person. And I think all of these changes are for the good, and these are the things that the insurers should really focus on.
Yeah, so two things. One is that, when the COVID hit us, it was 2020, one positive thing happened. The awareness of insurance suddenly grew. So what you actually saw was that the penetration of insurance actually which has been very, very low in India, actually started increasing, and we were touching about 3.2 odd penetration, which is very close to the global average. So suddenly the interest on both health and life, I think so, was pretty high. So suddenly, you had a lot of customers showing willingness to buy. So there was a fundamental shift. People suddenly started talking about insurance. So that was one big change which happened. And customers' expectations, they keep changing, right? And what this COVID-19 did was that it fast-tracked these expectations, right? Indian consumers always been demanding. They want the best, they want the cheapest. And I think so when this wave hit us, there was a fundamental shift on what customer wanted. So 2 or 3 big shifts which we saw actually was, one was the demand for a simple product which they could understand. Suddenly, the face-to-face interactions, people were not very keen. The sales guys, the agents, and the distributors did not have an access where they could ring a bell, go and meet and have 2, 3 conversations because everybody was scared that, of the infection. So suddenly the digital adoption, went very, very high. But that's not it. To support the digital adoption, your product had to be simplified and it had to be made in an easy, understandable manner, which person could be explained on a video. So that was a big fundamental shift on how the insurance was sold in the first place. It was very prominent, right? Second, obviously, was how does he want to engage with you? So suddenly, when we looked at our data, the branch walk-ins almost finished, and it is still continue to be dipped. We don't have customers now walking into a branch. We still do, but there's a 30% dip. Even after the pandemic is almost more or less finished, or there have been, periods where there is not much of a scare. But we have not gone back to what we used to see pre-COVID. If we had 100 people walk into a branch, today we have about 60 people walking into that branch. So how you service is actually also changed. So in this time, we saw that, people who used to come to pay premiums, surrender a policy, or any other queries is now fundamentally being, done digitally, right? And so we had to kind of ramp up our digital processes around it. The fundamental engagement and the servicing piece obviously went through a very, very big change. So to my mind, these 2 or 3 things came out to be a very, very thing. And third, I think so very important is that because of the uncertainty, a person was not sure, will he have a job? Will he continue to pay the premiums which he's been paying? So there was a big scare around this, right? And there's a lot of fundamental shift that should I invest in insurance or should I just save my money for, more liquid this thing. So that had to be tackled. So that's a big fundamental shift even now. And hence, we really started talking about, payment holidays. How can you revive the policies? Can we, give them flexible payment terms? So all of this came into the foray because now the customer's expectation was that if something happens, if I lose my job, how do I continue with my insurance policy? So at least those 2 or 3 big fundamental shifts at a higher level is what we saw. And that's exactly what our strategy on, coping with these changes have been around.
Thank you for the question. During COVID, as well as post-COVID, I represent the health insurance sector. And we were very bravely, along with the healthcare sector, were in the face of COVID. And whatever commitments or promises, when you sell insurance, especially health insurance, it is just a A4 size paper that in case of any emergency, in case of any adversity, we are going to stand by you. And COVID was such a situation, a pandemic, no one had priced for it. No actually had any knowledge of how much incidence rate, what is going to be the cost. We had huge amount of challenges and it upended the whole system and the back end, the way the consumers would get serviced. From a customer expectation standpoint, as Kirti mentioned and Naveen added to it, it was a completely lives versus livelihood kind of a situation. Confronted with that kind of a challenge, how does a health insurance company stand up to that challenge and in alliance with the healthcare segment, support the customers is what really was a very big question. And that's where, the expectations around comparing us with the tech giants, how deliveries would happen in 15 minutes, how can I really have 24/7 support system, the entire, technology aspect of digital transformation always existed. Not that insurance companies have invested into it now, but COVID really propelled the utilization. Because in less than 24 to 48 hours, we had to move into complete BCP. There were no sites, as in if you have a particular issue in a particular geography, you would have a BCP in some other part of the world. But COVID really, kind of shook us, waking us up to the fact that irrespective of the situation, any kind of geography or other parameters, you have to have backups. And that's when we moved into a completely virtual call center. Our employees were at risk. We had other challenges. So the changes that we saw, how insurance is sold, that is the sourcing bit, because as we all know, even today with so much of digitization and transformation that we are seeing, the fact of the matter is that insurance is sold as a matter of trust. So customers, it's not about when there is a claim, we are going to honor that claim. It was about, are you going to stand with the consumers, and how are you, as a brand, how are you making them feel? Are you confused, or are you going to really pay the PPE kit cost and all the other parameters? So how do you make the consumer feel was a very important factor that the whole health insurance industry in general, for that matter, came together, stood together by the customers. And most importantly, the entire back-end operations, whether it was underwriting. So we had underwriting parameters. That went through a complete change. Consumer would not go through medical testing in the time of COVID adversity. No one could visit the customer's home. No, the customer could not go for a, kind of a PPMC or tele-underwriting for that matter. So how do you really transition that whole journey? So we saw some innovation coming in that space, and also the way the claims were approved. So a lot of innovation happened on that side as well. So I would summarize by saying the way insurance was sourced and sold, the way products were created and kind of transitioned into as a product factory, the way consumers were serviced at the back end and front end, and most importantly, the whole data layer. How did it all come together due to COVID is something that has really caused a lot of innovation, supported by a lot of new customer-focused and pro-customer regulatory, practices or guidelines that the regulator was also kind. We had a lot of aspect around telemedicine. It was not covered. So a lot of innovation came through even on that aspect.
How has technology actually helped in this area? Specifically, if I'm talking about in terms of your customer experience, and how do you meet your customer expectations?
Now, Bajik is in the business for the last 21 years, which means that we have the data of paying claims or not paying claims for the last 21 years, right? Now, we make use of that data using the technology. We put that data on the cloud. Then we apply the entire AI power to it, right? And coupled it with the photogrammetry in a solution. And then said to the customers that, hey, if there is an accident, what you just need to do is just click certain photographs on the spot, upload it, and in 15 minutes, the money is there in your account. Now, all this is possible only because of technology, right? It can't be possible, without the technology, right? So technology actually is playing a very, very vital role, especially in the field of claims. And the key is that each and every company has that data, right? The answer is that how you are making use of that data. Most of the times, companies don't really, go into that data. They get into the structured, unstructured, all those jargons and all those stuff. Just forget about that. Make it simple. Just pick the right thing, right, and go for it.
Sure. If I can come to you, Anjana, in terms of what are the top technologies which are actually, should I say, for want of better word, disrupting the insurance industry? And how are you actually leveraging that to differentiate yourself?
How pandemic has changed the customer expectation. There's one more dimension, which is the new digital native population, which is also defining or mandating the insurance carriers, not just the insurance carriers, everybody, how they would like to transact, how they would like to get serviced. So they are, again, actually forcing us to reimagine. Insurance, it's all about, can you, okay, fine, there is a cover. Can there be a connected experience across my devices because I'm using multiple devices? Can there be a continuous underwriting, or there could be an underwriting which can stop and start depending upon when I want it? Yeah. Can there be covers which are relevant, and can you give me insurance bundled where at an ecosystem where I prefer to transact.
Yeah.
It could be an e-commerce ecosystem which I prefer to transact, and I would like to transact, buy an insurance cover, or avail my servicing from that ecosystem rather than me coming to your website or me coming to your chatbot and interacting. Yeah? Can there be an option where just by voice commands, I can invoke, request for maybe, inquiry to start with, and it could also lead to transactions depending on how the security layers come in. Again, metaverse. Can there be really a journey carved out for a three-dimensional, the metaverse which will eventually come in? Can there be an immersive experience? So these are the few areas I feel voice, metaverse is one more thing, blockchain as Ankit was talking about, can there be a proactive claim intimation? Why should we wait for somebody to notify a loss of claim? Can there be an event, and that event, so non-life has already, at least for travel claims, they have implemented. Can something similar happen when somebody gets admitted to a hospital, insurance company comes to know? Or can there be like, if one insurance company comes to know about a death, can the fellow insurance companies be notified? Because most of the times nominees don't even know how many policies,
Yeah.
their father had. So those are the things which I feel where technology will redefine and reimagine the insurance.
To me, pandemic was an important inflection point. Before pre-pandemic, not that these technologies were not available. We were talking about AI, ML, and every other technology, but there was a hesitation. I would say, been an insurer now for 30 odd years, so I can say that with an element of truth there, that there was a hesitation in terms of, will the customer accept this? Not from the fact that do we have to do it. Will the customer accept this? Pandemic showed that the customers are more digital than what we thought. That was a very, very important realization insurance companies had. That's why you would see that the past couple of years, there is so much talk about insurtech, so much about everything relating to technology which furthers insurance company. But let me go right down to the basics. Why would I look for a disruption? A disruption happens when there is an opportunity waiting to be exploited and somebody thinks differently. But whatever an insurance company thinks, what can improve? Time of a transaction can become much better. Quality of a transaction can be improved immensely. Most importantly, the cost per transaction can come down. These are the three very fundamental things that we are looking at if we are saying that I need to bring in a new technology. Of all this, insurers, I'm saying this for past 3 decades plus that I know, insurance is all about cost leadership. The ability to provide a certain service or a product at the least cost to yourself with the same level of satisfaction to the customer or even better. So from that perspective, insurers have played this along and are enjoying. I mean, there is insurers every insurer is in some part of their digital journey. So it's not like one has taken over and done everything. Everybody is at different stages and they would go ahead, and next couple of years is going to be extremely interesting.
How do you think technology has helped you in that?
Sure. So with COVID, a lot of digitization happened, as my co-panelist mentioned. There was a time when health insurance claims were supposed to be, by regulation, be received as hard copies, scanned, and then, there was a little bit of innovation there. And if I can say part digitization, because we wouldn't label it as digitization, so to say. So claim would come to a branch, it would get scanned, it would get posted into the central repository. Then, tabulation, a part of, adjudication, and all of that would follow. Now, classically, that is not digitization, because the moment somebody goes to a hospital or maybe hires a cab to go to a hospital, ideally speaking, there should be an alert as connected devices experience that Anjana and I think even Ankit and others spoke about. How could an insurer be alerted that possibly a customer is taking a cab to a hospital? There could be a health eventuality, maybe an emergency or maybe an OPD. And how could we alert them proactively to really get intimation? Now, unfortunately, that wasn't the case, in the past. But with COVID, we made representation to the regulator that please allow us to really digitally get intimation, digitally get inputs from the customers as well as the hospitals, and allow us to process the claim and not wait for the hard copies. Now, with all of this happening, as we know, India is a very diverse country. It's a large population wherein, any innovation or any kind of value that you offer to the consumers will lap up that, innovation, and you will have large numbers of people buying the product. Forget about insurance, any product for that matter. Now, in insurance as well, with a lot of innovation, ultimately insurance is nothing but how soon, how well, and how transparently you pay a claim, whether inpatient or OPD. And that's how a trust, will build in, and that's how people will, start buying insurance, because penetration has been a challenge because of the trust deficit that has remained in the country for a very long time. With that, at the backdrop of innovation and digitization and soft copy claims, we saw fraudsters, and we don't have a, EDI or electronic data interface unlike many other countries worldwide. So we have, this situation where a consumer would make a claim. We would not be able to, rate the claim. We saw a huge amount of fraud coming in. Both indemnity, fixed benefit fraud, came through the system, because as you would relax the norms of underwriting, relax the norms of claim adjudication, you would have through-the-door fraud coming in. So fraudsters really, kind of miscreants really created huge amount of innovation in how they could defraud the insurance industry. But at the same time, a couple of them, colleagues spoke about, we had the data. So we really innovated in creating a AI/ML machine learning model, continuously, throwing up patterns. In other geographies, in the Western countries and a couple of other geographies, fraud investigation doesn't need to be surveillance on the ground. You don't need to send a, surveyor to go back and find out whether there is fraud. But in India, because we don't have the EDI and we don't have medical record keeping across different, journeys of the consumer, you have to go back to the field and check, was there a misrepresentation? Was there a non-disclosure? Is the customer actually claiming for a claim which has been impersonified and claim has not really occurred? It is very important to identify all these facts, because if you end up paying claims, on one side, I have said that insurance is all about paying claims. But if you end up paying fraud claims, those kind of burden will go back to the genuine customers and end up increasing the load of premium, and affordability will be a challenge. So we did innovate from a AI/ML model standpoint. We threw patterns of such, fraud in terms of geography, in terms of customer profiles, and, connected with the social media profiles of the consumers. We had a lot of such patterns coming in, and we created that fraud model to really throw up patterns and thereby eliminate the delays in the process, is what I would like to mention.
How do you manage that, given that you don't have, as Priya said, an industry-level database or something, whether it's at the time of processing a claim, or even at the time of onboarding a new customer? So,
And we talk about customer expectations and experience, right? Which largely people talk about the stated needs. The stated need for a health claim is that as a customer, I want you to pay my claim,
yeah.
right? But what we also looked at is the unstated, need of the customer. And we introduced, a program called Care Angels. Now, these Care Angels are there at the hospital as well as virtual Care Angels, depending upon, the hospital size. Now, what these Care Angels actually do, they basically say that you take care of the patient, to the attendant basically, and we will take care of all the other administrative work at the hospitals. It's not only about the admission and getting the cashless approval, or, making sure the final billing is through, but the in-between processes of the hospital, right, which is taking care of, let's say, there is a huge queue at the CT scan and you are an IPD patient, you will wait for typical 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. This guy also takes care of that. This guy also coordinates all of that. So this is taking care of that unstated need. And this guy is equipped from a technology standpoint, a tab, okay, which is having all the information, the customer 360 and all those stuff. At the same time, when we talk about the fraud, since this guy is there and handling the entire process, this guy acts as an input that in case there is some fraudulent activity, it could be from the customer's end or from the hospital's end as well. Right? So he's able to catch hold of that and take care of it. Right? So it's, the point I'm trying to put forward is that we at times try to make things more, difficult, right? The simple solutions are always there, right? Like in this example which I just gave, people may say, that, okay, you're just deploying a physical person at the hospital, what's the big deal? But then look at the benefits. This guy has been able to deliver the unstated needs. When we talk about the matrices, this guy is running at an NPS of 100, no detractors, no passives, 5-star ratings. The customer is super happy. There would be a cross-sell as well, right? Because this customer now will say that if I don't have my, motor policy with this insurance company, I would want to renew with you now because of you. So it's not about that company, it's about that person, that care angel. And of course, the fraud angle.
So when you look at the process of claim processing, besides this, what do you think can you look at from a technology point of view?
Today, one of the questions that comes to my mind is, why don't we have a customer blacklisting process or a fraud database or anything of that sort in the industry? The truth is that you can't have a formal such database. The moment you do this, unless somebody is convicted by court and called as a fraud by a court, I can't go and call him as a business enterprise. I'll have face huge costs for doing that. The second challenge is that we are not customer-centered as an insurance company. Obviously, it's like many countries, you would have your citizen ID,
Sure.
and that forms the basis of whatever you buy. So, you can bring in a benchmarking of cost, benchmarking of what kind of, what kind of claim requires, what kind of a treatment, etc., etc. We do it. But I don't think we have reached a stage of perfection. And I think that when you fight fraud, we don't fight for perfection in doing that. You can never make fraudulent claims as zero.
Sure.
The idea is to minimize, idea is to make sure that somebody who makes a fraud will not be able to do it easily.
So what would be your advice specifically on the security measures and the technology that can help in managing that?
Maximum number of threats that we have seen in the recent past are due to some kind of a ransomware attack, right? So it's not only about the safety of the data in the data center or the data center itself, but everybody who is part of the ecosystem is vulnerable. So I start with awareness. We need to build awareness in the minds of employees as to what they should do, what they should not do. Also educate the customers, okay? So awareness is very, very important. Third is, of course, invest in robust security systems, which all of us will do. But that is no guarantee that we will not be attacked or under threat. Everybody has already been under attack or will be. So I think we need to invest in very, very good response systems, red teaming exercise, tabletop exercise, to just ascertain if something were to happen, how do we identify it quickly, minimize the damage, and move on.
Sure.
I think these are the things that one really needs to focus on.
So in 2023, the landscape has changed, right? So in terms of the expectations from the insurance providers is different than what it was a decade ago. People probably crave more simplicity. They want to manage their policies without leaving their homes and probably will prefer digital interaction than what they were doing earlier. At the same time, they also value personalization like never before, right? So alongside these rules, they also expect a personalized support in terms of claim processing and faster processing. So it's the technology, how do you manage that technology to help provide this will determine your success. And that's what I would like to conclude with. Thank you.